Oh.
And then you are dying. You guys should probably not die.
Damn. Damn.
Oh my god.
Here.
Thank you. One of them's still down.
They've officially pissed me off.
Stop. Put on a squad.
Oh, sheesh, which is better?
Sheesh.
Where did Octane go?
Found in Apex Legends are a diverse set of unique weapons separated into many different categories. Some weapons are just better than others, but none of them are objectively bad. Among these weapon types we have the assault rifles, the shotguns, the pistols, and of course, the SMGs. SMGs in games are often considered the gods of close-range combat, as they allow you to fight both at a close range when the enemy is right in your face, and at mid-range when something like a shotgun would be much less effective. Apex, of course, is no exception, and possesses a wide variety of very strong SMGs, and surprisingly all have their own uses and situations where they would be considered the strongest. So in this video, I'll be going into detail of which of the 5 SMGs is the best and why. Before we begin, please note that I'm very biased and these opinions are formed from a combination of my own in-game experiences and from the way I like to play the game, as well as the stats of the weapons themselves. With that in mind, let's quickly talk about each of these weapons' stats, starting with the R99. The R99 was once one of the most powerful SMGs in Apex, appearing in the game upon release, deciding to try out the care package in Season 6, returning to floor loot once again in Season 7, only to find out that there was a cooler SMG in town, before finally settling where it is today as only a fraction of its former self. Don't get me wrong, this gun is still very powerful, and in the right hands can be absolutely merciless, shredding through enemies so fast you think you're playing COD, but as of right now, its stats are outdated compared to its competition. First off, one thing you may know, the R99 cannot one-clip someone that has a red Evo shield without an extended mag. It falls just short of 225 damage, and is the only SMG in the game that needs an extended mag to kill someone without reloading. Granted, this will rarely impact a fight significantly enough to justify completely ditching the weapon and disregarding it entirely, since near the end of the game you've had up to 12 minutes to find a light mag. But when you get unlucky enough to end up in the top 5 without a light mag, it can be pretty frustrating to be one bullet short from killing your target. The R99 has a fire rate of 1080 rounds per minute, making it the SMG with the highest fire rate of the 5. It does 11 damage per shot, uses light ammo, takes about 3 seconds to reload on empty, and has a pretty fast time to kill against someone with a red Evo. So overall, a very good SMG. The alternator is what I like to think of as the R99's younger brother. It uses the same ammo type, but shoots slower, making the recoil easier to control. Having a slower firing speed means you'll be shooting more and reloading less. But the reload time is faster? Wait, what the? It does 16 damage per shot and has a fire rate of 600 rounds per minute. It has a slightly slower time to kill, which you might think automatically makes this gun worse than the 99. But in the right hands, I've actually found it to be better than the R99 depending on the situation. Since it could do up to 135 more damage with a full mag, it can actually be pretty useful when you have to deal with multiple people at once. But I'll talk more on that later. The car, conceptually, is a very interesting weapon. Being the only gun in the game that can take both light and heavy ammo respectively, it also is the only weapon in the game that accepts both light and heavy attachments. And honestly, what can I say about the car that hasn't been said a million times already? It's a damn good gun and is incredibly helpful when you're trapped in a small area, forced to fight several teams at once, and you need all the ammo you can carry. With every other SMG, you need one specific type of ammo, which, if there isn't any around, you're basically down a gun, and a team that's third-partying you isn't going to push with only one gun. Meaning that without this thing, you're going to be at a major disadvantage in a situation where you need to keep your ammo resupplied regularly. So, if you're fending off a small room in the final ring, have less than 180 bullets at your disposal, and are currently using an SMG, then it would be in your best interest to drop the SMG you're currently using in exchange for something that would give you more options in the scenario where you'll need it. Now, obviously there are some exceptions to this, like if you're using the Volt, it's not worth ditching all of your ammo and attachments unless it's absolutely necessary, and if you have a Loba that knows how to press the Alt button, you don't have to worry about ammo management at all. The car does 13 damage per shot, has a fire rate of 930 rounds per minute, and takes about 1.37 seconds to kill, which is only 0.2 seconds more than the R99, making that high fire rate seem like it's not even there. The Prowler is unfortunately not as good as its automatic counterparts, and it's a shame because before they removed the select fire hop-up, it actually used to be one of my favorites even before it was put in the care package. Now, it's worth mentioning that I am once again very biased in the arguments I make, and I've made it very clear that when I play Apex, I'm just not a fan of burst weapons at all. So maybe take this part with a grain of salt, but it goes beyond my personal distaste towards burst weapons in general, which I'll get into more later. The Prowler is a burst fire SMG that does 14 damage per shot, has a fire rate of 666 rounds per minute, no I did not make that up, and takes 1.58 seconds to kill. Keep in mind that in no way am I saying this weapon is bad. It can actually be very good when used by an experienced player, but as it stands right now, I feel like it's just an inferior option when compared to other SMGs. I'm sure if I used this weapon more and really experimented with different ways of using it, I would eventually warm up to it. But as of right now, it's only good for holding heavy attachments until you can find that flat line you're looking for. Finishing off with the only SMG that requires energy ammo, the Volt was and continues to be one of the best SMGs in Apex. Funny story, when this weapon first was released back in Season 6, I really hated fighting against it because it was so good that it practically was the only thing that people used since it did so much damage. But apparently it took Respawn 2 whole seasons to realize this, which is why in Season 8 they finally reduced the damage to what it is today. 15 damage per shot, a fire rate of 720 rounds per minute, and 1.5 seconds to kill. Another great option for shredding enemy gamers. Now that I've given you an overview of all these weapons, it's time to do what every Apex player has done a million times before. Rank them worst to best. And in last place, I really struggled to label a single weapon as the worst, because truthfully, none of these SMGs are bad. All things considered, they're all actually very good and surprisingly balanced in comparison with each other. But in the end, I ended up giving the last place spot to the Prowler. Now, I know this isn't a surprise to most of you, but there's a reason the Prowler remains as the least used SMG in the game. Beyond the fact that burst weapons just aren't as reliable as automatic ones, a simple problem is holding this weapon back from reaching its full potential. And that problem is panic. With every other SMG in Apex, all you have to do to kill someone is to line up the shot and hold the fire button. But with the Prowler, you have to line up the shot and press the fire button up to 7 times. In a safe environment, such as the firing range, this may not seem like a problem, but load into a game and you'll quickly realize that while using a burst weapon, the closer someone is, the more it triggers your get the heck away from me mode. And the closer the enemy is to you, the more you have to move your crosshair to adjust to his movement. And that doesn't even account for fast or high level movement like jump pads or tap strafing. So in short, the closer the enemy is to you, the more you're gonna panic. Which means that, yes, with enough practice, this weapon can actually be great, but that's the problem with it. Every other SMG in the game can be picked up for the first time and used almost to their full efficiency, while the Prowler has to be learned and mastered. This makes it much less convenient than the other SMGs, because this is a game, man. I'm not looking to practice with a gun I don't enjoy just so I can get similar results to just picking up a 99. And don't even get me started on hip firing this thing. That's so panic inducing you'll look like a bugged Gmod ragdoll. Personally, I've found that the best way for me to use the Prowler is to slap a 2x on it and ironically treat it more like an AR. This way I can fight at mid-range when panic isn't a huge risk, and as a last resort to when I've gotten my enemy low enough with my secondary to finish the job. Just barely placing above the Prowler, the Alternator is a decent weapon with its own set of strengths that set it apart from other weapons. For starters, as I talked about earlier, it can do up to 135 more damage in a single clip than the R99 can. That's 58 less than the Prowler, 42 more than the Volt, and 81 more than the car. I admit, the Alternator doesn't do what any SMG does better. With the slowest time to kill out of all the SMGs, it isn't exactly the superior option for 1v1 scenarios. Rather, it does excel in 2v1s. Imagine this, you're running around as Pathfinder looking for loot when you see an enemy lifeline. She has purple armor and you have blue. You pull out your Alternator and she pulls out an R99. After observing that this lifeline's SMG choice is better in this scenario, you grapple over her, making her waste a mag worth of ammo and making space between you both. Now, since you have the advantage in this situation, you use your weapon's lower recoil to more precisely hit your target, and just before she goes down, an Octane jump pads right in your face, seemingly from nowhere. You notice the Octane has a Peacekeeper equipped, so you know all you have to do is juke him out enough to make him miss so you can fully knock the lifeline and move on to him. After downing the lifeline, you observe that you've taken 145 damage, meaning you're down to 30 health, and are gonna need to either retreat to heal, or juke harder than you've ever juked in your life. Luckily, your aim was on point today, so you knocked the lifeline using only 15 bullets, meaning you have another 12 bullets at your disposal, dealing 192 damage. So if that Octane has blue armor, he's as good as dead. You shoot at the Octane, and unfortunately, he has a purple shield. But you've also noticed that he's currently stimped, which means he's down an additional 20 health, making his total health 180, enough to finish him with the rest of your mag. The Octane notices that his health is very low, and his PK shots get sloppy. He hits you for only 3 pellets, dealing 27 damage, but that's not enough. And while he rechambers, you're given enough time to empty the rest of your clip and take him out, winning you that fight with only 3 health. And then a third party charge rifles you from across the map. Now there are so many what ifs that could be said in this situation, so many variables to account for, and this was only an example, but it goes to show that in this very specific situation, you would have died using the same process with something like the R99. Since you would have to reload at least twice, and the Peacekeeper's rechamber time is much shorter than the R99's reload time. The only reason it's being placed in 4th is because I literally had to give you a situation where it would be the best, making it situational by definition. I couldn't say it's generally good in any fight because that's just not true. So, sorry Alternator, but you get a participation award. Finally, we've gotten to the big one. The oh so controversial one. The one that everyone and their grandma has an opinion about, the R99. This was by far my favorite SMG when I first started playing Apex, and it had remained that way up until around Season 11 when the car was released. Well, what changed, I hear you asking? To which I respond, shut up and let me finish my sentence. With the introduction of the car meant more variety than ever when picking up an SMG. The game had 5 unique SMGs scattered all around the map, each with varying pros and cons, and it made you think a little harder about which one you were going to pick up. It was pretty special, and is a big reason I even made this video. But this section isn't about the car, it's about the 99. And boy, tell me, what the hell happened to this thing? Respawn didn't necessarily make the gun worse, it's just that they made all the newer guns better. Seriously, Alternator and Volt have range, car has damage, Prowler has... It really made the 99 irrelevant in its current state. Yeah, it kills fast, but you're risking more effort for less results. And of course, this thing can still shred people, and the satisfaction you get from one-clipping someone after hitting every shot in your mag is like no other feeling in this game. So it sucks that this thing has taken a backseat to the guns with less recoil. It feels similar to the situation with the EVA 8 and why I preferred the pre-buff EVA, which I'll use as an example. So let's just rip the band-aid off first and let me say that I think the EVA 8 is too powerful. The fire rate is way too fast and it does too much damage per shot. So much so that it often outperforms the Peacekeeper, which I don't think is fair. The way it should work is in exchange for a higher fire rate and easier bullet spread, you should have a slight disadvantage to the people who choose to make their shots more valuable by punishing you for missing them. This should also be how the R99 works compared to its counterparts. It's got more recoil and a higher fire rate, so it should reward those who can use it well by rewarding more damage than an SMG that's easier to control. To put it simply, I think a risk-reward system should be a bigger focus in the game, making sure that the more skill the gun requires to use, the more results you get out of using it well. Let me tell you, it was not easy ranking this one, and honestly, it kind of hurts me that I felt it deserved second. But before you find out where I live and kill me in my sleep, let me explain. The Volt is an excellent SMG. Low recoil, high damage, great range. It has it all. So, why did I rank it in second? Well, it's not because I still have a grudge against this thing from when it was ridiculously good back in Season 6. It's actually because of something much more subtle. The ammo type. The Volt uses energy ammo, which, big deal, right? Hell, that might make it even better. Low projectile drop, high damage, it's the perfect ammo type. No! No, it's not. Quick show of hands, how many people feel they consistently have too much energy ammo every game? Okay, you're not raising your hand. Well, I'm assuming it's not a lot of you. Sure, you might get a game where you have an absurd amount of energy ammo and a plethora of enemies to use it on, but there are 5 energy weapons total in the game. 2 are LMGs, one's a marksman, and one's an assault rifle, and is now in crafting. Which means that the only one of these weapons that are meta right now is the Volt itself. I guess the Havoc is also pretty popular right now, but how many people do you see actually running around with a Havoc? Ain't nobody got enough patience to find a replicator anymore, so I'll just drop, loot, die, repeat. But hey, all you Loba mains got an heirloom now, so she seems a little more useful with all this insufficient ammo talk. Anyway, gun good, and there's only one left, so no need to really build up the big moment since you already know what it is, the car. Yeah, so some of you may have seen this coming. Some of you may have been in denial about the Volt undoubtedly being the best gun ever, and some of you may be wondering why I'm starting to sound less like I know what I'm talking about. The car is, in my opinion, the best SMG currently in Apex. Allowing for both light and heavy ammo, it's got the convenience of the ammo type, it has a ridiculous damage output, and a moderate amount of recoil. Sure, it's not ideal for ranged combat, but when was an SMG ever designed to be used at long range? That's what the assault rifles are for. That's why Respawn allowed us to have a secondary weapon. They could have just done the same thing they did with Titanfall, where they said, here's a primary gun and a secondary you'll never get to use because you'll get meleeed before you can even pull it out. P.S. You. You could argue that if you wanted to fight close range, you could just use a shotgun, because yeah, the Volt and a shotgun go very well together, and I'm not saying that these rankings are solid in the baseline for every scenario and playstyle, because again, how I like to play the game, from my personal experiences in those games. But this gun has too many convenient qualities for me to toss into second place. Case in point, the ammo type. The ammo types. The fact that this gun can take both light and heavy is such a useful feature and is by far my favorite thing about it. Your teammate is low on light ammo? Drop it and start collecting heavy ammo. You're trapped in a small room with a team pushing up on you? Well, if you kill them, that's almost double the ammo you could possibly get out of those death boxes, meaning near the beginning and end of a game, this weapon is absolutely life-changing. And up close, this thing is absolutely devastating, and though not as satisfying as the R99, one clips still feel great. Hell, the only downside to this weapon I could think of was the fact that it can't take laser sights, which I would compare to the Flatline not being able to take barrel stabilizers, in the sense that you're trading higher recoil for higher damage, just like the Flatline vs R301 controversy, which I might talk about in another video. And having no laser sight doesn't exactly make this thing bad, it just means that you'll need to be a little more careful when engaging an enemy, not to let them get a distance where it's too close to ADS but too far to hipfire. Oddly enough, I found the Volt excels in long and close range combat, so I would say all around the Volt would be a better gun for general combat, but the car helps fight against the age-old problem that everybody in this game loves to hate, third parties. Again, 2 ammo types means more ammo to loot out of bins and boxes, so if you're having an especially third-party intensive Apex session, here's a tip: use the car. All jokes aside, at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter what SMG you use. Everything is all down to preference, so just because some random guy on the internet told you to like the car the best, that doesn't mean you have to use the car to reach peak efficiency while playing. All these weapons have moments where they're easily the best in that given situation, and you're not going to win every fight just because you have a specific gun in your hand. You don't even have to agree with this list at all. I'm sure everyone out there has their own internal SMG tier list already thought out, and that's completely okay. If you want to run around with the Prowler and remind people that it can actually do damage, then absolutely go for it. In fact, even though I just said the car is generally better than the Volt, most of the time I still prefer the Volt over the car, just because of the flexibility it allows while fighting, the cooler sound, the cooler skins, the cooler... Oh wait, I'm supposed to be ending the video right now. At the end of the day, just use what you're more comfortable with, and sometimes that changes every day, or maybe even every hour, but please God do not take this as factual, because it's not. Anyway, that's it for me. This video will be uploaded on my birthday, so be sure to send me all your money.